Hi, my name is Allison Moore-Bolwer, and I'm the Government Relations Director here at the National Association of Social Workers Texas chapter. This is about a 10-minute presentation on the Texas Legislature, what you need to know to be an effective advocate here in Texas. So we're going to go over some fast facts about the Texas Legislature, what it actually looks like, and what you need to know most before you do any type of advocacy. We're also going to talk about some definitions, as well as a map of the legislative process, and finally share who are some elected social workers in Texas. So it's important to think about that the Texas Legislature is divided by two chambers, the Senate and the House. I know that many of us are from Texas, but a lot of us aren't. And so whether or not you are originally from Texas or you've moved here from out of state, it's important for all of us to get a refresher. And this is why we're just taking it back to the very basics. So the Senate and the House, they have very different personalities. They have very different vibes and cultures. And in Texas, the 31 senators in the Senate each have a 4-year term. And they aren't elected on the same cycle. So you're not always going to have new senators coming in at the same time. Whereas for the House, there are 150 representatives, and those representatives have 2-year terms. So because of those simple facts, there are very different cultures within the Senate. The Senate is typically people who have more political background and have maybe even served as a representative before they became a senator. Senate districts are also larger, so it is just a different type of race to become a senator compared to becoming a House member. And in the House, because there is so much turnover, someone can come in and only be there for 2 years. There's a lot of turnover. The culture there is way more fast-paced, explosive, perhaps more passionate with how they talk to each other. Whereas in the Senate, it's more slow-paced, more thoughtful speaking. Each senator actually has their own microphone, whereas in the House, they have to line up at the back mic to even share any of their thoughts. So just very different cultures, but again, the Senate and the House. So 31 senators and 150 representatives. Next, you may have heard this term before, but there is the big three. Sometimes you'll see this in media, and you might have wondered, well, what does that even mean? Who are the big three? In Texas, those three people are the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House. So these three people, regardless of who they are termed the big three, and they often have the most power within the Texas legislature. So the governor is chosen by popular vote by the Texas public. Right now, the governor is Greg Abbott. He's a Republican, and he's currently on his second year of a 4-year term. So he will not be eligible for re-election until 2022. Now, the presiding officer of the Senate is the lieutenant governor, and this is also done by popular vote. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, he's also a Republican and is also going to be up for re-election in 2022. Often the governor and the lieutenant governor will run together, kind of as a team, showing that they are ready to work together and ready to serve the state in this way. So you often see those folks campaigning together, as Abbott and Patrick both did. Now, the interesting thing is that on the House side, the Texas House of Representatives chooses their Speaker of the House by the House members. So the Texas public has no say in who becomes the House Speaker other than who their representative votes for. So right now, the Speaker is Greg Bonin, who's a Republican, and he will actually be leaving his seat at the end of this year. So the new Speaker is TBD and will be decided and voted on in January 2021. Now, the culture is that typically this person is known for being more bipartisan because they obviously have to have enough votes to win within the 150 House representatives. So you'll often see this person being more moderate, more willing to work with both sides, and also someone who has more history in the House and knows a lot of people, knows how to work the room, and is able to make some bipartisan deals happen. Now, let's actually talk about what session looks like. So you may hear the term session and not know what that means. So what people are referring to is the legislative session. Now in Texas, it's every other year on odd number years and is only for 140 days. So in a lot of other states, they meet every single year. Now, in Texas, that means that we have a lot going on in those 140 days. And it's often considered just a very fast-paced atmosphere purely because we meet every other year. There is a lot of energy, there is a lot of passion because people are trying to get things done, knowing that they won't have another chance for another couple of years. Now, when we're not in session, it's called the interim, which is what we're in right now. So only the governor may call a special session, which brings the legislature back into session. Now, when a special session is called, the governor the governor decides what topics will be covered during the special session. So sometimes it may be one or two topics, or maybe more than one topic. Now, sometimes it's specifically to help one bill get passed that might not have passed during the regular session, but it's important to know that often legislators will still file bills that aren't related to the topics during special session, but it's unlikely that those bills will pass during a special session. Now, the most recent special session was actually in 2017. There was not a special session in 2019. So there are rules that govern how bills move during session, and there are actually a number of rules that dictate when a bill can actually be voted on. So because of this, that means that the most legislative activity tends to happen in March, April, and May once people are actually able to vote bills out of committee and bills are able to move throughout the process more quickly. And I'll get more onto that in a little bit. So legislators, these are again the senators and the representatives. Their main job is to represent their constituents, and the constituents are the people who live in their district. So I think this is an important thing to remember, that if you are a constituent to the person that you're talking to, your voice matters to them purely because you are a constituent. You live in the district, even if you did or did not vote for them, or even if you disagree, or if you are personally a different party than them, they, as your representative or senator, still are supposed to listen to you, even if they disagree, or even if they don't take your opinion to heart when they are voting on something. Now, legislators file bills based on their constituents' needs and interests, but also on their own interests. So maybe you'll see a legislator that in their past was really involved in perhaps school board, or has worked on healthcare related items because they are a nurse or a social worker or a doctor. Often you will see those legislators tend to focus on those topics more because that's what they're the most comfortable with, that's what they want to work on. And you will often see that those things are typically what they want to spend their time on. However, sometimes constituents will bring forth ideas to their legislators, and that will be something that the legislator will decide to work on too. Now, it's important to know that legislators, both in the House and the Senate, work on committees. And this is not decided on their own accord. They may make recommendations or asks on what committees they serve on, but ultimately it's up to the Lieutenant Governor for the Senate and the Speaker of the House in the House to decide which committees they serve on. It's important to know too that committees are set every 2 years. So at the beginning of the legislative session, committees will be officially decided, and then legislators will serve on those committees for 2 years. It's also important to know that those committees do meet in both the session and in the interim, so that committee work will continue no matter whether or not there are actual bills. They will still be working on gathering information, perhaps having invited testimony. A lot of other items will take place during the interim. Now, you may be wondering, well, what kind of committees are these? So some examples of committees related to NASW Texas's work: in the Senate, there is the Health and Human Services Committee, there is the Education Committee, and there is the Business and Commerce Committee, which you might wonder, oh, business and commerce. But on the Senate side, all of the insurance related bills actually go through that committee. On the House side, the committees that we are most involved with are Human Services, which works on things related to Medicaid, child welfare, disability rights, things like that. Then you have Public Health, which obviously is working on more public health related items, mental health, substance use, access to services, things like that. Then you also have the Insurance Committee, as well as the Public Education Committee and the Higher Education Committee. Now, it's important to know too that legislators have offices both in the Capitol, so in the physical Capitol in Austin, but they also have district offices. So sometimes they even have more than one. That's why it's important to, when you want to look at who your legislator is, it's important to take note of where their offices are located. There might actually be one closer to you than you think, and that's a great way to schedule meetings with them, is to know where those offices are located, because it's important to know that advocacy continues throughout the interim, not just in session whenever the legislators are at the Capitol. As you can imagine, during the session, they are at the Capitol a lot more than they are in their district offices. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're wanting to schedule a meeting with your legislator. All right, I'm going to move this over here. So how a bill becomes a law in Texas, I want to just do a brief kind of overview of this, but please know that this is not an in-depth look at what exactly can happen, because there are 1,000 different scenarios that can happen during this process. But essentially, a bill will be filed, either a House bill or a Senate bill. If it's a House bill, then it will be HB, or if it's a Senate bill, it will be SB. And the very first goal for the bill is to have a hearing. So that means that the bill will be referred to a committee, and it's referred to a committee based on the topic that it is related to. And then the next step will be that it has a hearing in a committee. So you're hoping that the committee chair or vice chair will make the decision to have the bill, to let the bill have a hearing. And it's important to know that the majority of bills don't even have hearings. So again, this is just the first goal, is to have a hearing. Then the bill will need to be voted out of the committee. So once a hearing happens, then the next goal is to get it voted out successfully. Sometimes bills will have hearings and will never get votes. So once it's voted out of the committee successfully and favorably, then it will be set on the calendar. So on the House side, it's called the Calendars Committee, and the Calendars Committee literally decides what bills go on the calendar. On the Senate side, it's called the Intent Calendar, and again, is set on the calendar for what day it will be heard on either the House or the Senate floor. Then you're looking for the bill to be voted favorably out of the chamber. So it's important to know that when a bill is on the House floor, it can have amendments made to it. And this can happen on both the Senate or House side. Sometimes these are things that the bill author wanted to make changes to the bill on during the committee, but there just wasn't time to have a committee substitute. Or other times it's people that want to change the bill either for better or for worse. Or at the end of session, you'll see a lot of people whose bills are not moving that are trying to add their bill onto other bills as an amendment. So something always to keep in mind is to watch for this whenever you are looking to see if a bill is voted favorably. Then once it's voted favorably out of either the House or the Senate, it goes to the other chamber and then must be set to a committee on that side. So again, the process continues all the way on the other side of the chamber to the governor's desk. Then once it's to the governor's desk, the governor can either sign the bill or allow the bill to become law without a veto. So even if a bill passes, the governor can still veto it. And it's important to know that this is possible, that this may happen. Last session, the governor vetoed around, I want to say 55 bills or so. So it's just something that's important to know. All right, so who are our social workers that are in office? Right now, we actually just have one social worker in office, Representative Diego Bernal, who's House District 123. So while there were some social workers who ran for office, the only social worker who is currently in office is Representative Bernal. All right, so a couple of other just quick announcements are that we will be having a Social Work Advocacy Day week this year. So instead of having SWAD, which is our advocacy day, we're actually making it an entire week. So we will have virtual events with legislators and advocacy speakers each day. We'll also have daily calls to actions that you can do wherever you live, because this will be an entirely virtual event. And then we'll also have opportunities each day to debrief with other social workers to share and learn about advocacy together. So save the date for March 1st through the 5th so that you can join us for Social Work Advocacy Day week. And we will have a lot more details to come, but please just save the date on your calendar, tell other social workers, and plan to join us. Now, another reminder just in the future to vote. Obviously, we're past the elections this time, but it's never too early to start thinking about the next election cycle and to make sure that you're registered, make sure people around you are registered, and knowing that voting is a big part of social work, especially in the advocacy process. Last, we often get asked, well, how can I get more involved? So a big part of that is becoming an NASW Texas member, because we listen directly to our members when we're working on things at the Capitol. Also, we will have advocacy alerts that will go out to our members so that you can engage in different parts of the legislative process, depending on where the NASW Texas bills are. One great way to know exactly what's going on is to follow the NASW Texas Advocacy Twitter, which I have the Twitter handle right there. I encourage y'all to do that. I'll be posting a lot of updates once session starts about where things are and what's going on. So last, we're so excited that you wanted to learn more about the Texas Legislature and what you need to know to be an effective advocate. We hope that this was helpful to you, and we hope to see you at the Capitol, either virtually or when it's safe in person. Thanks and have a great day.